Everybody who knows me knows I'm not Karen Blixen's greatest fan. But here I am in her museum in Denmark. And to be honest, there are a lot of attributes she had that were positive. So let's get into it. I have actually never seen any African woman give any story about their opinions or any thoughts about Karen Blixen. For me, she was just a lady who benefited from her life situation, to be honest. And she was very well off. She was extremely well off. If you can see, all of this was their property, the family property. Very beautiful. Right now, it's about 15 hectares of land, which is a bird reservation. How many people have that? Even now. So from that time up till now, not counting their property in Kenya, it's quite a substantial amount of stuff she had. She lived a good life. She went through stuff that I'll talk about as well, but she did live a good life. So I'll do this video with the audio running and footage of the museum as it goes. This here is the main museum, and this is where Karen Blixen lived most of her life. I believe when she left Denmark, she left from here. She married a Swedish baron who was her cousin, because they could do that then here. And they left Denmark to come to Nairobi, Kenya, to run a coffee farm, which she basically tried to run but did it herself because he was not into it. He'd be out gallivanting, Happy Valley and all that. I think he was more interested in that type of life because, the colonials, the British colonials and all the colonials who settled in Kenya were quite messy, for lack of a better word. Anyway, he gave her syphilis. She was unable to have children. She lost several children because of this man. And eventually she met the English aristocrat Dennis Fitch-Harton, and he had an affair with her, a long and very public affair that was overly romanticized in the movie Out of Africa, which is a great movie that I encourage everybody to watch. It's very, very beautifully shot, and won very many Oscars. And I love Meryl Streep, who played Karen Blixen. Eventually David died. Dennis, not David, but Dennis, and the farm failed, and she had to move back home, and was considered sort of a failure because her family had been sending money to her to run this farm, but it just was not meant to be. But eventually she started writing and would write under a pseudonym, and it was a man's name, and she eventually wrote short stories, finally coming up with Out of Africa, which she's best known for. And up till that point is where I say that her resilience was very admirable. If you look at her and everything that she went through, it was not easy. When she got her syphilis, she had to be treated with the medication. She was basically poisoning herself from the inside with the medication they used to give for syphilis at the time. And it must have been tough. I sympathize. She was a very resilient lady, and she used her experiences to become an author, a very successful author, and for that you have to admire her. But on the flip side, we must consider her outlook on Africans, which, to be honest, I do not think she held in high regard. She referred to them, the African workers on her farm, as her Kikuyu. Her Kikuyu. I don't know what any Kikuyu would say to being referred to that now. Please, if you're Kikuyu and you're listening to this, let me know what you think about that. And she also wrote about them that she was more interested in their hygiene and considered them to be lazy. Now, I don't know much about much. I'm no scholar, but that's racist. She seemed to hold Somalis and Indians in high regard to Africans whom she considered to be childlike. It was when you see her writings of Africans, she is extremely patronizing. And I speak more of African men that she'd write about. And even when you see her pictures of her workers, it's primarily African men. I'm sure there were African female employees that she had, but I don't know if there's anything specifically written about them. That's why I'm always been interested in looking at this lady and her work through the eyes of an African woman, because they were around her, but I don't know if she even noticed them. And I use the term employee when speaking about her workers, but I don't know if there's any record of payment. I've never bothered to look. But as far as I know, how things used to run at the time, people never used to be paid. I'm not saying she never used to pay her workers, but I'm saying that things were dodgy. And she said about her life and her experiences in Africa, and I quote, "The final judgment to be passed on the white race's behavior in Africa lies far into the future. History will be the judge." Well, it's now 2024, it will be 2025 soon, and she said that in the 1930s. So, right now, it's history speaking. I'm the judge. And as much as she struggled in her life, things weren't very kosher, for lack of a better term. And the author Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who is Kikuyu, said of her, Blixen's literary presentation of Kenya turning the country into a vast erotic dreamland in which her several white lovers appeared as young gods and her Kenyan servants as usable curs and other animals. He clearly was not impressed by her either. Colonialism was a tough time. We're still recovering from it. And as much as I've said, I sympathize with her. She went through a lot. She overcame a lot. But let's face it, she benefited from a racist attitude. And, she benefited from the times as they were. She's a product of her time. I can't blame her. But sometimes we just have to call a spade, which nobody does here. And I wish somebody would. Thank you for coming with me on this tour. It was really interesting to go to the museum. I've been to the Kenyan Museum several times. And this was fun to see as well. And to realize what I already knew about this lady. Thanks for watching. Stick around for more. I'll be posting more in the coming year. Have a happy new year and bye-bye.